Hey there everybody, this is Ed and welcome back to another edition of Bagel and Booze. We're on Super Bowl weekend. It's Chiefs-Niners. No doubt on who I'm rooting for. Chiefs. Although I kind of screwed up and I probably should have wore my Chiefs stuff that I had on last week's review this week. This week we got Mickey Mouse. I don't know. Everything's all screwed up here on Bagel and Booze. But what I do know we are going to do is we've got a beer review. Specifically, we got an edition of Backyard Brews because we're heading up to Lancaster, PA for this one. I could even call this one a buddy review, buddy beer, whatever you want to call it, because this is one that one of friends got for me. They want me to review it. They try it. They saw it interesting. I said I would do it, and this week we are going to give it the old review. We even got a The More You Know moment. Finally makes its triumphant return. But before we get to all that, make sure you click that subscribe button so you are staying up to date with the latest beer reviews. And we're going to go ahead and get it sniff tested, taste tested, and ultimately find out if this beer will chug. So for this week's edition, as I said, we're heading up to Lancaster County, and specifically we are going to be sampling out a beer from Lancaster Brewing Company, and it is their Shoo-Fly Porter, which clocks in at 6.2 ABV. What they say is they take their porter, brew it in with Lancaster molasses, toasted malts, and throw in some vanilla bean. I guess, hopefully, when we taste this out, it's going to have that flavoring of Shoo-Fly Pie. Nice, dark, rich, sweet molasses. Be interested to see how well that pairs into a beer and if they could translate that into a beer flavoring. We'll find out. It was interesting to find out of their recommended pairings that they have with this. They say it pairs very well with candied yams because that is specifically what you're going to eat with candied yams. Drink with candied yams is some beer. Maybe you do. I don't know. I guess dinner. It works. Glazed holiday hams. So there you go. Candied yams and glazed holiday ham. I guess nice Easter or Christmas dinner. And without a doubt, it pairs well with Shoo-Fly Pie. Of course, you know it's not a Bagel and Booze without our The More You Know moment. It's not our week dry cider versus sweet cider that we had last week. We got a full-fledged edition of The More You Know moment. So let's get into it without any further delay. So for this week's The More You Know moment, we're going with nothing else than the beer itself, Shoo-Fly Pie, or I should say actually the title, name of the beer. Not title, but the name. And believe it or not, Shoo-Fly Pie, it's got nothing to do with flies. This dessert, which is pretty much synonymous with the Pennsylvania Dutch, actually started out as a dessert called the Centennial cake, which was a crustless molasses cake introduced in Philadelphia for the World's Fair in 1876 to celebrate none other than the Centennial of the United States. It was a crustless version of Shoo-Fly Pie. Best guess is it was like a coffee cake with molasses bottom. You know, the accurate recipe for Centennial cake is kind of lost to history, but the best guess is it was basically like a molasses coffee cake. Shoo-Fly Pie basically takes this cake and throws it into a pie crust. It's thought that this occurs sometime between 1876 and the early 1880s when it's found its way into the area of the Pennsylvania Dutch. It grows in popularity in these communities basically due to its lack of eggs, its use of non-perishables, and affordable ingredients. Basically, the pie consists of nothing more than flour, brown sugar or dark corn syrup, baking powder, molasses, and pie crust. That's about it. So because of these ingredients, these pies are going to have a generally longer shelf life than most others. And more importantly, these pies were popular in the winter months due to hens generally not laying eggs during colder weather. Eggs themselves don't get added to the recipe until around 1920. There's two variations of the Shoo-Fly Pie. There's the dry bottom and there's the wet bottom.
I've got a soggy bottom!
The dry bottom is the older of the two versions and is more akin to the original Centennial cake recipe. Basically, what they take is the flour mixture, kind of the crumb that you would get on the top of like a coffee cake, and this is mixed in or layered with the moist molasses. While it is cake-like, it's still technically a pie because they contain it within a crust. It's a cake in a pie crust. Anything within a crust, I guess, falls into the realm of a pie, so take it for what it is. But basically, they liken it to a soft gingerbread stuck in a pie crust. The wet bottom, the more popular of these two, and what we really think of Shoo-Fly Pie when we think of Shoo-Fly Pie, finds that we have the molasses mixture custard, whatever the heck you want to call it, is topped with this flour crumble mixtures. The layers are definitely separated with the pie crust on the bottom, molasses filling, and then the crumble flour mixture on top. This version of the pie is thought to come about by accident sometime around the 1920s. No correlation to the addition of the eggs. Still doesn't have eggs in this version. But it's when the pies basically don't get cooked enough. The molasses kind of seeps into the pie crust. This is what gets popularized by the Pennsylvania Dutch. And like I said, it's the version that pretty much everybody knows. So as far as the name Shoo-Fly Pie, it's in and of itself is pretty damn interesting. And most people, I guess, when you think of Shoo-Fly Pie, and even I, before looking at all this, kind of figured that the name comes from a reference of shooing flies away that are attracted to molasses. Lots of sweet stuff that's in it as it sat there and cool. Unfortunately, no, this is not where the name comes from. Particularly, as we said before, the pie was popular during winter months, and guess what? There's no house flies to be found usually around this time. What is the more likely explanation for its name is that it was named after the Shoo-Fly brand of molasses, which was popular in the 19th century. The name goes even further back than Shoo-Fly molasses, as Shoo-Fly molasses, along with other products such as Shoo-Fly flour and some other things, were named for a circus mule that toured southeastern Pennsylvania in the 19th century. His name was Shoo-Fly the boxing mule, and he was trained to stand upright and donned boxing gloves on his front hooves, and he fought a horse. I'm not making this up. Go look it up. But even with that, the name for Shoo-Fly the boxing mule goes further than that, in that he was named for the folk song Shoo-Fly Don't Bother Me, which was written during the Civil War and was still popular throughout the 19th century. Within the lyrics of this song, there is a mention of angels pouring lasses down. Well, lasses is short for molasses, and we come full circle back to the name of Shoo-Fly Pie and its name etymology. So there you go. There's a brief little history of Shoo-Fly Pie, wet versus dry bottom, where the name came from. Little did you know that Shoo-Fly Pie came from a Civil War song, and more importantly, from a boxing mule. Stranger fact than fiction. We're not making it up. We tell the truth here on Bagel and Booze. So now that we got the more you know moment out of the way, let's go ahead and get this poured out and get it set up for our taste, sniffed, and chug test.
I drink and I know things.
So we got everything all poured out, and as you kind of see, it sets up nice and dark. The head kind of dissipated on this thing, but it set up pretty much to the top of the glass, and it was a nice dark coloring that was there, very well formed. I should have been quicker with the camera. I wasn't, so we lost a lot of that head that's in there.
So she said.
As far as the sniff, right off of the bat, I'm not getting much of the vanilla that's coming through, or even that sweet molasses. Truth be told, it really doesn't have much of any smell. Kind of interesting and weird, but it is what it is. So, without much of a smell test that's on it, there's only one other thing to do. We got to get into the taste test, and hopefully we get some flavors that come through on this and kind of set it up and give us that taste of Shoo-Fly Pie. So, let's go ahead and give it an old taste test. So, okay, there. Took a little bit. So we're getting kind of a little bit of the sweetness that's in there. Definitely getting some of that vanilla. The vanilla is definitely coming through in connection with this. I was quite surprised as it's starting to come through, that we didn't get that on the initial kind of sniff test. Again, like I said, there was really kind of no smell to that thing. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Usually we get some flavor that kind of shows up on that, but with this one, we'll give another little swig. We do get kind of that molasses, the sweetness that comes through. There's definitely a nice malt flavor, nice toasted flavor to this beer. I guess I was expecting a little bit more of the molasses to kind of come forward on this. It's there, but it's not really prominent. I don't know, maybe that's a good thing, because I guess if you got too much molasses, it would kind of give you kind of too sweet of a flavor profile. But all in all, sets up fairly decent. As we continue to have a few more swigs, as we know, we always sometimes get a little different flavoring profile that comes through after the initial taste test. But for this one, now it's still pretty much kind of stays the same. Not really getting anything much different. It's a little thin on the flavor for me. As far as a rating, I guess I'm a little perplexed on this. We'll give it a 3. Like last week, we were going to take this one right down the middle. I'm not hating it. It's not wowing me over. With porters, usually they're one of my favorite types. Porters and stouts, those are usually some of my favorite types of beer. I think for this one, just the lack of kind of an overall flavor profile is kind of doing me in connection with this. Maybe if there was a bit more robustness, for lack of a better term, this one would probably have rated higher. But as it stands right now, it's a little thin. And I think that's what's kind of detracting from it for the rating. So we're going to keep this one at a 3. It's got some nice vanilla, got some nice toasted flavoring to it, but all in all, it's not wowing me. But again, I'm not hating it. I can't really hate a porter. Some porters, some stouts I can hate, but with this one, it's kind of run in the mill. Not spectacular. I would like to have seen a little higher, but all in all, it's not a bad drinking beer, but it's just not wowing me for anything. So I guess with that, there's only one thing left to do. It's chug test time. So like with all of our chug tests, it's going to be really interesting to see if we kind of get any flavor profile changes, see if anything really comes forward. As we know, sometimes when we kind of drink this thing real fast, different flavor characteristics out of the beer's profile will come forward. I'm not having much expectation that anything's really going to change on this one. Just like I said, is the way it stood. It's a little thin. We didn't have any real smell profile to it. So I guess with not to delay anything, let's go ahead and bottoms up. Okay, so it kind of took a little double duty, but we did chug it. It is chuggable. And yeah, I'm not getting much different. If anything, what I am getting is I'm getting more of an intensity of that, the toasted flavor to this. I'm still kind of missing that molasses. Usually when I have Shoo-Fly Pie, it's a very nice, dense, heavy, flavorful. You can really taste that molasses. Molasses has a very distinct smell to it, and just kind of missing that in this beer. Maybe they could have brought that forward a little bit more. I don't know. Maybe they didn't want to alienate people with too sweet a beer, but again, off of the chug test, it's not changing anything. It's still stuck at a 3. I don't even really, the vanilla that I was getting before in the Chug Test gets overshadowed by the toasted flavoring to the beer. So with this one, I guess kind of had higher expectations. Didn't really meet it. It is what it is. All in all, it's not a bad beer. It's not a great beer, at least in my opinion. I know I'm one man, and your mileage may vary, but it is what it is. And, I got it from somebody else. I didn't go out and buy it on my own. Would I go and seek this out on my own? Probably not. If it was there at somebody's house or at a party or something, and it was there to drink, I'd probably drink it, but it's not something I would actively go on my own. So there we go. We got our review of a beer that was given to me to review. Gave it the shot, gave it the review. Hopefully they agree with it. I don't know if they drank it. Probably not. I'm almost going to guarantee not because of knowing who provided it to me. But with that, I'm done. This is done. We're done. And I thank you again for tuning into another edition of Bagel and Booze. Thanks all.